Let's kick this thing off with a story that nobody else is really talking about. That's Colin Kaepernick, Gregory. All quiet on the Colin Kaepernick front as of late. Nothing going on, at least that I'm aware of. So I want to tell you why I think it makes sense for the Steelers to look into this guy. And before we get into all of that, I think we have to address this workout that's being run by the league. Maybe one of the weirdest, strangest sham productions that the NFL has ever come up with. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think it's a complete sham.
What was your initial reaction when you heard that the NFL, not Colin Kaepernick, had scheduled a workout?
That there's no way anybody's going to show up to this on a Saturday in
Right.
Week 10 of the NFL season.
Or even Week 11, which is this week.
Sorry, I got confused with I don't know, life, but yes, that's a good point.
It's strange. It's all very strange. They gave the league gave Colin Kaepernick 4 days notice. They balked on Kaepernick's request to both move it in terms of time, date, and location. They're effectively, scripting the workout. It's going to be run by former Cleveland Browns head coach Hugh Jackson.
Huh.
This is a complete sham. I think I referred to it as an ill-conceived olive branch on the NFL show, and I do think that really is what it is. This is the NFL saying, hey, how are we blackballing Colin Kaepernick? We're literally scheduling workouts for him to show his abilities off. It's not our fault if teams don't show up. It's not our fault. It's all about Colin.
Yeah, it's complete. And I'm not, Colin Kaepernick at one time was a very good quarterback. I don't necessarily believe he still was when he left the NFL. But I also think what the NFL's doing is it's a complete crap. It's awful. Like, this is the kind of stuff where you just look at the league and you go, who thought this was a good idea? Like,
right.
What's the issue with giving him an opportunity? An owner still has to make a decision to sign a guy, regardless of it. And if he looks good and he's good enough to get in there, which by all accounts, he's definitely good enough to carry a clipboard on the sideline if he's a backup. Like, there's no doubt about it. You see some of the guys that come in and out of this league or still have jobs in this league well after they should. I mean, the guy still definitely has some sort of value to the NFL. It's just they have a problem with his personal views and his politics. And that's a real... the more you look at it, like, the more it's kind of shame on the NFL for doing it. Like, it is a business, and obviously when something like this was taken into such a weird world where it was politicized so ridiculously that it was essentially like, this could cost us a ton of money. We don't want to deal with this. Let's get this guy out of here.
That's exactly right. I don't think they have odds for this over at Bovada Sportsbook, but I am curious as to what they would be. How, given that the league is running this workout, what do you think the odds are that this thing kicks off with the national anthem?
I don't think they're very good. I think this is going to be a very straightforward, quick in and out, no messing around, do some workouts on the field, answer some questions in an interview, and that's about the end of it.
Well, I was looking for Colin Kaepernick-related stuff today, and I did see, again, at Bovada, that they have a prop bet for will Colin Kaepernick be signed by an NFL team before the end of the 2019-2020 regular season. And, that good enough to get me interested for sure. Plus 425 yes, minus 800 no. Where would you put your money on that?
I got to take the plus odds, Chris. I have to, even if I think it's like throwing away money. I think you have to do it. I also think that there's the Eric Reed factor. How he was sort of lumped in with this Kaepernick situation, and not because somebody was making things up. I mean, he was right there with Kaepernick the whole time,
right.
Standing side by side with him, and that guy, because he has value to the league, made his way back to the league. I think that Kaepernick could have value. Now, I don't know if he's a starter. Let's remember that the guy in a Chip Kelly offense was benched for Blaine Gabbert. Now, Chip Kelly's a terrible head coach when it comes to the
Chip Kelly
NFL.
offense.
So,
yes, keywords.
So it is bad, but That run-pass option offense that Kelly runs was sort of perfectly built for Kaepernick's skills, and he did not flourish the way that I think a lot of people thought he could.
Right, but the thing that I think he has working in his favor, first of all, I don't care what happens in a Chip Kelly NFL offense. Chip Kelly has proven to be an entirely inept NFL coach. Forget about that. It can all be thrown out. I'm not worried about it. What I think he has working in his favor right now is the success that's going on with Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. We're seeing that if teams are smart, you can build very, very good football teams around running quarterbacks. Now, we're also entering an era, and I've been talking about this for years, as the passing offense became more and more in vogue in the NFL, that we're getting to a point where eventually someone is going to circle back around, go run heavy, and it's effectively going to revolutionize offense for a brief period of time because nobody's going to be built to stop that. We're seeing this in Baltimore. I don't think there's any reason that Kaepernick couldn't put up Lamar Jackson light numbers in the right offense, and I really do think that Pittsburgh is the place to go. We talked about that at the Open. They're tied to Mason Rudolph for the future. Why? I don't have any idea why they feel like Mason Rudolph is the future of their franchise, other than the fact that they happen to invest a third-round draft pick in him in 2018. Doesn't make any sense. He has been all right. Mason Rudolph in this season, 131 for 203 for 1330, 64.5% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. The numbers are all right. You know, it's fine, I guess. Not hurting a team, not helping a team. To me, these look like backup quarterback numbers. They compare, very closely to guys like Kyle Allen, guys like Case Keenum, guys like Mitch Trubisky, guys like Ryan Tannehill. Now, I know that with the exception of Trubisky and Allen, those guys have been in the NFL a little bit longer and they've proven what they can be. You assume that potentially there's upside with Rudolph, and that may be the case, but he's not showing enough right now to get me to commit to him long term. He's not even putting up Gardner Minshew numbers. And Gardner Minshew has been wildly overrated because he's a fun story. There's no objective reason why the Steelers should tie themselves to Mason Rudolph for the future and cut off other avenues. Now, you're going to have Roethlisberger back next year. This feels to me a lot like a Baltimore situation where you had Flacco and then the sort of heir apparent in Kaepernick with, at that point, Lamar Jackson. Now, I will point out that Kaepernick is going to be 33 years old next year, not 22 or 21 like Lamar Jackson is. But assuming that you can play till 38 and there's no reason to think that he shouldn't be able to, you can get 4 or 5 years out of him as a starting quarterback once Roethlisberger eventually leaves. You get 4 or 5 years out of somebody as a starting quarterback in the NFL, they did their job. The other thing that I think we should seriously talk about is Pittsburgh doesn't have the offensive weapons at wide receiver they thought they might. Juju Smith-Schuster does not look like the same football player as a number one receiver as he did, when he had the cushion of Antonio Brown drawing coverage away from him. He's going to go from 111 catches to right now he's on pace for about 55. We're just not talking about the same player. Massively overrated coming into the year. Good football player, just not a great football player. He's also a pretty good blocker, and that's going to help in the running game. You have a Kaepernick, you have a Connor, you have guys like Jalen Samuels. This offense to me seems like it is destined to be a running offense, and adding Kaepernick in the vein of Lamar Jackson in Baltimore seems like a reasonable way to move forward.
Chris, I don't...
Greg.
I love this new comparison that I keep seeing, and you made it already, that Kaepernick could be Lamar Jackson light. Kaepernick was Lamar Jackson, just not as talented when he came into the NFL. I mean, you're talking about a guy who his most rushes, or his most yardage for a season rushing-wise was 639 back in 2014. That's when he was 27. We're talking about 5 years ago. It's a different world. I know that he has, less mileage on his legs and things like that, because he hasn't played since 2016. But I find it hard to think that he's going to come in and have the impact a guy like Lamar Jackson's having right now. I mean, Lamar Jackson's doing things better than we ever saw Colin Kaepernick do. It's just and Colin Kaepernick took a team to a Super Bowl. I don't think the comparison's really there outside of the fact that they're both able to get out of the pocket. That's really it. Lamar Jackson's a much better passer, as we've seen over the course of this season, proving a lot of scouts and everything wrong. Also, the Steelers' weapons, I don't think James Conner's taking enough blame this year for, I guess, lackluster performance. I mean, it's hard for me to judge Smith-Schuster with Mason Rudolph in there, a guy who's probably not a starting quarterback in the NFL. He's certainly been disappointing, but he doesn't have a ton of help out there. I mean, if you look at the 2 games he had with Ben, and obviously game number 2 is when Ben got hurt, so he missed a significant part of that game. He had 13 catches for 160 yards, 162 yards in those first 2 games. I mean, not outstanding numbers, but compared to what he's been getting now, it's really not great. I don't think the Kaepernick's the answer for the Steelers in this situation. I think you can ride the rest of this season out. Your defense is good enough, right? Your defense has clearly turned a corner, and the addition of Minkah Fitzpatrick has been outstanding and really worked out. And it seems like maybe it was worth that first-round pick that they gave up. Hey, Howie. I think you can let him manage the game, and you have to continue to use these other guys outside of Juju because he's going to be double covered, or the best corner on the other team is going to be on him. I think that's what you have to do. Play it out, see how Ben is next year, and then you can make a decision from there on how you want to go. I mean, it feels like an overreaction to latch into something and hope that you have the same flashes that you had of 2014 Colin Kaepernick.
But it doesn't need to be the same. That's the whole point I'm making. We're in a different NFL now. This is an NFL with defenses geared up to stop the pass. If you put a competent running attack and you stick with it, you can win football games. And that is something that adding a guy like Kaepernick would allow a team to do. You made a quick little allusion there to Howie Roseman, and I want to get this out of the way because I feel like it needs to be addressed. The Steelers gave up a first-round pick to get Minkah Fitzpatrick. Are you really suggesting that Philadelphia should have topped that offer?
I think they should have at least given it a thought. I mean, the guy is...
How do you know they didn't?
I mean, I don't know they didn't, but he's a clear game changer, and I think you should have been willing to put a lot more on there. Plus, if you look at his contract situation, he's making very little money very early on in a contract. And for a guy that's making this much of an impact on a defense, especially when you're a team that is desperate for secondary help, it's really frustrating to see that wasn't able to be something that you worked out.
I don't disagree that the team needs secondary help. They clearly do. However, we have to take ourselves back to the moment of that trade. And we were thinking that it was conceivable Pittsburgh traded a top 3 to 5 pick in the draft because Roethlisberger was already out at that point. For Philadelphia to match that sort of value, they would have had to give up 2 first-round picks for Minkah Fitzpatrick. That's crazy. For a position that isn't an immediate need in Philadelphia at safety. Are they going to need to replace McLeod next offseason? Yeah, probably. But it's not an immediate need. Now, if you're telling me they should have given up 2 first-round picks for a guy like Jalen Ramsey or something like that, I can buy into that argument. But not for Fitzpatrick. I thought the Fitzpatrick trade was insane value for Miami. I still do. As good as he is, he's a free safety. And even though free safeties have a lot more impact on a passing NFL than they did back in the day, 2 first-round picks would have been crazy. Now, with all that said, should they have claimed Vernon Hargreaves? Of course They should have. absolutely crazy that they didn't, and something that I don't understand, but maybe that's why I'm not yet running an NFL team. I don't. So we're on the same page that Rudolph is not, or at least likely not, a long-term starter in Pittsburgh, correct?
Yeah, I don't think he's shown enough. I mean, obviously we have, the final 7 games of the season or 6 games of the season to figure this out and just get a little more tape on him. But I don't think he's been overly impressive. Now, I don't think he's cost them games necessarily, and I think that there's just certain situations that he's just not ready for. Plus, he was hurt. You had the 2 games with Hodges that, in that role, starting one game and coming in a 23-26 loss to Baltimore. So it's hard to judge Mason Rudolph in those games because obviously he wasn't there. But him, it hasn't been overly impressive. I'll certainly agree to that.
I want to stick with another former Steeler while we're talking about this team. Over at Bovada, they asked, will Antonio Brown be on the roster for a team game 1 of the 2020 season? Yes, plus 155, no, minus 222. Where's your money going?
Oh, man, the plus money is it just begs you to take it. I think... Man, it's so tough because he's so dumb with the stuff that he tweets and telling the NFL they can, do whatever they want to themselves. Mm-hmm. Come on. I'd have to say yes. I think there's too much talent. I also think that whatever's going on with this, it's weird since he's been cut. We haven't heard a lot about that civil case that was levied against him. I don't. Mm-hmm. It seems suspicious to me. I don't know why. I'm sure it's just working its way through the legal system, but nobody's talking about it, which makes it
nobody's talking about Antonio Brown because he's not on a roster. You're right, though. I do think, man, this is the fine folks over at Bovada this is a smart line right here.
It really is.
Because they are just daring you to put money on the fact that talent wins out and a guy who is one of the 5 to 10 most talented receivers in football has a home for the start of the 2020 season. For those who are sort of uninitiated in this area, the plus 155 means you bet $100, you win 155. So you're basically, it's it's exactly a 155% return on your investment. And that's, man, that's tempting. If I could double my money just because a really, really talented football player has a place to play football, man, that is hard not to do that.
It's something that I think you have to heavily consider. And I think the NFL has always been a place where, actually professional sports in general, are always a place where talent usually wins out over crazy. Unless you're towards the end of your career. And I don't think Brown necessarily is. He's still very early into his 30s. He might only be 30. He's 31 at the, I think, oldest. He certainly has value in this NFL. I'd be remiss if I could just say he's never going to play again.
Yeah, Antonio Brown's about 31 and a half. So it's crazy. But I mean, we also, I guess we want to use Terrell Owens as sort of an analogy to this as a guy who was out of the NFL too soon, but he did sort of kick around a little bit later with the Patriots and other teams. He wasn't quite out of the league as early as we thought. And he was also a guy who didn't really break out until he was 26. So that period of time seems a little bit shorter. We think it was earlier than it was. Wrapping this up, what do you think of Mason Rudolph and those Steelers tonight going against the Browns on Thursday Night Football? Bovada has the Browns -3.
I love the Steelers in this spot. I think this is one of those games where the Browns think that they have everything all figured out. They got the hard-fought win against Buffalo last week. They couldn't cover that 3. I think the Steelers' defense is very good. I don't think they can cover this 3. That money's on the Steelers.
Well, Antonio Callaway's gone now. So.
Oh,
I love as an Eagles fan. I went to the Eagles Reddit and everyone is saying, "Oh, you have to put in a claim for Antonio Callaway because he can run fast." Yeah, he's also going to be suspended for 10 games he doesn't show up on time, doesn't care. This is Antonio Callaway is the kind of guy who, he's all the bad in Antonio Brown without the positive. You don't want him anywhere near your franchise.
Yeah, he's not very good either, which, Thanks.
And if you listen to Daniel Jeremiah, he's saying that since he started scouting, this is the best wide receiver class he has seen since scouting in 2003.
I mean, just the guys from Alabama alone should prove that.
Okay, I have thoughts on this.
Ugh.
Devontae Smith is going to end up being the most productive receiver from that group in the NFL.
Really, over Jerry Jeudy?
I think
like the beast.
I know. I think it's Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr. all over again. And I don't know. I'm going to take. I trust.
So one really good, consistent career and one really cool catch one time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to knock that Odell's had a very good career as well, but Landry's just a guy who produces, and that's what I think Devontae Smith is. Now, I guess the more apt analogy is if they also had Joey Galloway playing alongside them at LSU in Henry Ruggs Jr. So, yeah, pretty good receiving core at Alabama.
Nah, you're good. I knew what you meant.
Obviously, Beckham and Landry together
Playing
at LSU.
Yeah.
Well, let's get one, but until then,
please.
let's get a break. We'll be right back.